ಶ್ರೀಗುರುಭ್ಯೋ ನಮಃ. ವಾಗೀಶಾದ್ಯಾಃ ಸ್ವಮನಸಃ ಸರ್ವಾರ್ಥಾನಾಮುಪಕ್ರಮೇ ಯನ್ನತ್ವಾ ಕೃತಕೃತ್ಯಾಸ್ಯಸ್ತನ್ನಮಾಮಿ ಗಜಾನನಂ. ಶಾರದಾ ಶಾರದಾಂಭೋಜವದನಾ ವದನಾಂಬುಜೆ ಸರ್ವದಾ ಸರ್ವದಾಸ್ಮಾಕಂ ಸನ್ನಿಧಿಂ ಕ್ರಿಯಾತ್. ಶಾಸ್ತ್ರಾಬ್ಧಿಪಾರದೃಶ್ವಾನಂ ಸಂಗಹೀನಂ ತಪೋನಿಧಿಂ ಭಜೆ ಶ್ರೀ ಭಾರತೀತೀರ್ಥಗುರುಂ ಭದ್ರೋಘದಾಯಕಂ. ವಿಧುವಜ್ಜಗದಾನಂದಸಂಧಾಯೀ ಗುರುಶೇಖರಃ ಮಾನಸೇ ಸನ್ನಿಧತ್ತಾಂ ಮೇ ವಿಧುಶೇಖರ ಭಾರತೀ. ಅಕೃಶಂ ಕುಚಯೋಃ ಕೃಶಂ ವಲಗ್ನೇ ವಿಪುಲಂ ಚಕ್ಷುಷಿ ವಿಸ್ತೃತಂ ನಿತಂಬೆ ಅಧರೇರುಣಮಾವಿರಸ್ತು ಚಿತ್ತೇ ಕರುಣಾಶಾಲಿ ಕಪಾಲಿ ಭಾಗಧೇಯಂ. Offering my Sashtanga Pranamas to the Pada Padmas of the Abhay Jagadgurus. Today is a somewhat nebulous topic. As I said, I wanted to leave the Upanishadic nature of Lalitha Sahasranama until tomorrow when we have more time to discuss it. So for today, I had given a very general topic, which was a very encyclopedic nature of Lalitha Sahasranama. So the names that are contained herein require familiarity with many different shastras to explain. For example, Pratipanmukhya Rakanta Tithimandala Pujita. She who is worshipped by and as the 15 tithis, starting from Pratipat until Raka, which is Purnima. So obviously there are many things to talk about here. In the same way, there are many karmas that are discussed in this. And one more thing that Bhaskara Raya does in many places is, even where there is a river or a kshetra or a tirtha by this name, he will quote that also. For example, Nirbhava Bhavanashini comes. So Bhavanashini river, does anyone know? It is in Ahobila. So the Narasimha Kshetra of Ahobila in Andhra. So there, the river that flows past Narasimha there is called Bhavanashini. So he quotes that. He quotes that and says that the river at Narasimha, in this Narasimha Kshetra is called Bhavanashini. So after saying that Bhavanashini means this Devi who removes samsara, he also says it could also be that, this can also be taken to mean that she is of the form of this Nadi. Even more interestingly, Purushartha Prada Purna Bhogini Bhuvaneshwari. So here, when the name Purna comes, so he first tells Purna means the complete, full. Then he quotes Purnamadav Purnamidam, he quotes that. And then he says, Athava Purna Nama Kachit Nadi. Otherwise, Purna is a river. And we all know where this Purna river is. It is the river that flows through Kaladi. So in this way, in many places, he talks about the rivers and the kshetras as well. So, and many devatas. For example, when the name Vagvadini comes, Vagvadini means she who speaks. That is the literal meaning of Vagvadini. But as we know, Vagvadini is the name of a particular devata who is responsible for presiding over speech. And she is particularly invoked during debates and such. So he talks about so many such devatas. Then we also see in many places that the Samudrika Shastra, the Shastra of how the body should be. So for example, when the ornaments of Devi are talked about, he quotes Vishwakarma and talks about where each ornament should be placed on the body. So in this way, there are so many, and then some places he will quote some sampradayas wherein different strees have different names. A woman at different ages will be referred to in different names. So today we will see when he talks about Gayatri. So Gayatri, he will say it is a girl of this age. Durga is a girl of a particular age. Kanya, that Ashtavarsha Bhavet Kanya. We usually quote that so much to say that, see, until 8 years she is a Kanya. So how are we doing Kanya Dana after that? Many people get confused. Ashtavarsha Bhavet Kanya is a term that is assigned. A girl of 8 years is termed a Kanya. Just as a girl of 2 years is termed as a Gayatri. If I'm not wrong, I think for Durga. For Durga also, a girl of 9 years is termed Durga. So in this way, this is nomenclature. It is not saying that she is a Kanya until 8 and then afterwards she is not. So in this way, there are many, many places wherein Bhaskara Raya demonstrates a wide grasp of all the shastras that we have in Sanatana Dharma. So taking that also into account, if we are to discuss some names today, I thought we will take some names which Lalitā Sahasranama has one more habit of, it will put names in clusters. This also we have seen, right? So all the Panchakrityas will come in one cluster, all the Avasthas will come in one cluster. In the same way, for example, one cluster that we have is Yogini, Yogada, Yogya, Yogananda, Yugandhara. This is one set. Yogini, she is the, she has a yoga. Yogada, she not only has it, but she gives it to her bhaktas. Yogini, Yogada, Yogya, she is the object of yoga. And Yogananda, she is the ananda that is obtained through yoga. And then through that Yugandhara, she is supporting the system of time. So in this way we have some names that will come in such sets. So we will look at a couple of those. And then in the end, one thing that I want to look at is, there are many places in Lalitā Sahasranama wherein opposites are paired together. Ksharaksharatmika, Murta Murta, the Bhava Bhava Vivarjita. So these places where these dualities come, it is very interesting to note how Bhaskara Raya has very nicely explained all of that. So in a broader sense, this is what today's next hour and a half will be. So if we look in one place, we get Parapratyaksiti Rupa Pashyanti Paradevata Madhyama Vaikhari Rupa Bhaktamanasa Hamsika. So from Para until Vaikhari Rupa is one set. So we have discussed the Matrakas before. We talked briefly about the name Matraka Varna Rupini earlier. So when we talk about sound, this sound has a very particular place in Sanatana Dharma. Because sound is not just some waveform that comes about when two things collide or separate. Sound has, it is a facet of Chaitanya. Chaitanya expresses itself also as sound. So that is why there are, we see many places, for example in Bhagavata, when Kamsa is close to dying, he is realizing that his death is near. He says, I can no longer hear the sound of my body. So the point is that life has a sound associated with it. So, and then also we see that these varnas, we did not talk about it then, but when it says Matraka Varna Rupini, so there the word Varna, because the word Matraka itself means letter, there the word Varna has also been interpreted as the color. So each letter has a particular color associated with it. So it is clear that these letters are not just something that we are telling. There is something more primordial about it. So the way this entire set of names, from Para, Pratyakshiti Rupa, Pashyanti, Paradevata, Madhyama, Vaikhari Rupa, this set of names discusses what sound actually is, and even more specifically what speech is. Because there are, in this Nada Rupa, Narayani Nada Rupa also comes. So in Nada Rupa some things come. Then right next to that you have later on you have Shadanga Devata Yukta. So this talks, Shadanga Devata Yukta refers to the 6 angas of a mantra. That is to say, Hridaya, Shiras, Shikha, Kavacha, Netra and Astra. So these are the Shadangas. So she is the mantra who is accompanied by these 6 angas. So, and of course we have the 5 fingers and the Karatala Karaprashtha. Those are also 6. But when we say the Shadangas, we mean the Hridaya, Shiras, Shikha, Kavacha, Netra and Astra. These 6 are the Shadangas. So the sound, Devi as the mantra, is always accompanied by these 6 forms of these devatas. Right? So just as a devata will have the parivara devatas, the mantra, which is another form of devata, will have this parivara of these 6 angas around it. So in this way, many places we see that Devi is talked about as sound. So here it is not just sound but speech. So what is the difference between sound and speech? Sound does not necessarily have to come from a conscious entity. But speech can only come from a conscious entity, which is why we make a difference between sound and speech. Right? We say that some tree falls, it makes a sound. Right? When a human speaks, it is also a sound, but we call it speech. And that too, we usually only say speech for humans, not even for other living beings. Right? We don't say a monkey speaks or a cow speaks. Right? So this concept of consciously using sound to convey a meaning is what we call speech. So, animals also do this, but obviously there is a certain more refined way that humans do it in. So that is all covered in this. So speech is split into 4 categories: para, pashyanti, madhyama and vaikhari. This is a fairly common concept, in the sense that even in the Vatapi Ganapati Bhaji you have paradi chatvari vagatmakam pranavaswarupa vakratundam. So there also Dikshitar, Muthuswami Dikshita has paired these two together. He is the embodiment of the 4 forms of speech. Where does this speech originate from? Pranavaswarupa vakratundam. His face, the elephant head of Ganapati, is an embodiment of the Omkara, from which these 4 types of speech originate. So here Bhaskara Raya very nicely discusses this. So when he starts with para, he does not start with explaining what para means. He starts off by talking about how Shabda comes about. Because this concept of Shabda as Brahman is one that we get a lot in Shastra. We have one saying, Shabda Brahmani Nishnataha Param Brahmadi Gacchati. If you understand Shabda Brahma, you will understand Parabrahma. Yeah, Nada and Shabda are the same. You can generally understand it to be the same. So, Shabda Brahmani Nishnatah Param Brahmadi Gacchati. If you understand the form of Brahman as Shabda, you will then be able to more easily understand the higher form of Shabda. So, that is where Bhaskara Raya starts. He starts Atredam Bodhyam Pralaye Srijyamana Pranikarmanam Aparipaka Dashayam Tadrisha Karma Bhinna Mayavacchinnam Brahma Ghani Bhutamityachyate. He starts there. So, Pralaya, the world has been dissolved, but it is not exactly Nirguna Brahma, because Maya is still there. How is Maya there? Maya is there in the Karana Rupa, not in the Karya Rupa. That is to say, it is situated as the cause, not the effect. Because the karma of the previous kalpa has to be carried through to the next kalpa. Because otherwise there is no reason for the jivas to be born. Jivas are only born when there is some karma to be experienced. So when one cycle finishes up, the karmas that are still left over are kept in their bija, their seed, their unmanifest form, such that they can then be carried into the next cycle. And then again the Srishti opens back up again, the cosmos opens back up, and then the process restarts. So in that situation, Brahman is qualified by Maya, which is of the nature of these karmas. So because these karmas, everything is an effect of Maya. So Maya exists in the subtle form as the seeds of these karmas, and then it is called Ghanibhutam, packed into one place. And then what happens from that is that Tataha Paripaka Kshane. So karma Aparipaka Dashayam. Karma has not yet fructified. It is still as a seed, it has not fructified. When the karma starts to fructify, then Maya Vritti Rutpadyate Tadrisham Paripaka Karma Karana Karma Akara Pariganita Maya Vishishtam Brahma Avyakta Padavachyam. So then, once Maya starts to take a shape, it starts to take form such that it can start putting these karmas into place. So basically, it is not the unmanifest state wherein the karmas are only in the seed form, and it is not also the completely manifest state wherein the karmas are now set in motion. So there is some space in the middle wherein Maya starts to begin working. At that point of time, Brahman is called Avyakta, because it has taken upon the Avyakta Maya. Maya is also called, Prakriti is called Avyakta. So because Brahman has now taken upon that to start doing something, that Brahman is called Avyakta then. Ata eva tasyotpattirapi smaryate. So then he shows one Vedavakya. Tasmat, Smriti, Purana Vakya. Tasmad avyaktam utpannam trigunam dvijasattama. So from that unmanifest state of Brahman, from that this Avyakta has come forth. Then sa eva jagadankura kanda rupatvat karana bindu padena vyavahriyate. So it is this Brahman which has now newly assumed, newly in the sense that after the Pralaya has now again once again assumed Maya to start creating, that is called Karana Bindu. The dot, that is, or the point, that singularity kind of thing, that point that becomes the cause for everything else to come. So then this point, that is to say this Brahman which is unmanifest in the pre-Srishti phase but the post-Pralaya state, it is this Brahman that is called the Karana Bindu. This Karana Bindu then splits into threefold. This Karana Bindu then takes upon a threefold form. Asmacha Karana Bindu Sakashat Kramena Karya Binduhu Tato Nadaha tato bijamiti trayam utpannam. So this Karana Bindu splits itself into three forms, Kramashaha, step by step. So first it generates the Karya Bindu, then it generates Nada, then it generates a Bija. So this is the sequence. So until now what do we have? We have Nirguna Brahman, Maya is kept on the, not exactly Nirguna Brahman, but we have that Brahman which is keeping Maya on the side in the unmanifest form. Then you have the Paramatma who takes upon the Maya and to start creating. Then this Brahman is called the Karana Bindu. From this now you have a step-by-step sequence of three names. So we have the from the Karana Bindu comes the Karya Bindu, then Nada, then the Bija. So these are, they describe the nature of these three. The nature of the Karya Bindu is Chit. The nature of the Nada is Chidachit. The nature of the Bija is Achit. That is to say Jada. So the nature of this Karya Bindu is Chaitanya. The nature of the Nada is some mix of Chaitanya along with the Jada, Padartha. And the final form is the Jada, which is the sound that we hear. Right? The sound waves that we see are Jada. They are not conscious entities. However, there is obviously a conscious entity that is compelling this sound wave, the physical sound to come out. In the middle somewhere, there is a point wherein this conscious entity becomes, or this conscious entity ends, and the unconscious or the insentient entity starts. So this is what we have called as Karya Bindu, Nada and Bija. So then Tadidam Para Sukshma Sthula Padaihi Uchyate. So this is only called Para, Sukshma and Sthula. That is to say transcendent, subtle and manifest. So the Chaitanya Swarupa of sound is subtle, is not even subtle, it is Para, it is beyond. So the Chaitanya / not Chaitanya state of sound is subtle, and the manifest state of sound is the last one, which is the Bija. So that they have shown in the Agama. So the Agama tells us that Kalena Bhidyamanastu Sabindur Bhavati Tridha. That Bindu, the Karana Bindu, Kalena Bhidyamanaha Tridha Bhavati. It becomes threefold. Sthula Sukshma Paratvena Tasya Traividhyam Ishyate. These three states are the Sthula, Sukshma and Para. Sa Bindu Nada Bijatva Bhedena Cha Nigadyate. These three states are called Bindu, Nada and Bija. So he has shown the Agama also which talks about this. Then he then talks about how this manifests in the body. Ayamevacha yada karya bindvadi traya jananonmukho bhidyate tadrishayam tadrishaya avyaktam shabda brahma abhidheyaha ravaha tatra utpadyate. Avyaktaha shabda brahma abhidheyaha ravaha tatra utpadyate. So the thing is, as this Karana Bindu splits into three. As it splits into three, there is a sound that is created. So this Karana Bindu gives rise to a sound that is split into three. That is how we should understand it. That sound that is split into three is called the Shabda Brahma. So it is this Shabda Brahma that permeates this entire cosmos. Actually, he starts that way too, the Virat Purusha. The Virat Purusha, who we said, we have discussed the Virat Purusha earlier, who is the summation, the physical form of the cosmos, is called the Virat Purusha. So the sum total, just as the individual is called the Jiva, is called the Sthula Sharira, and there is a Jiva who takes upon that. If you take Paramatma as a Sarvavyapaka Chaitanya, and you take the entire Sthula Jagat, the entire gross cosmos as his body, then he is called Virat. So this is the body of Shabda Brahman, is how it is explained here. So then, when that sound becomes, it becomes manifest in the body, then there is a process to how that happens. So now sound exists in these three forms across the cosmos. But this process, this macro process, this big process that happened in the beginning of the cosmos happens every single time that we speak in the body. So actually this sound embodies one more concept that we have in Sanatana Dharma, which is that what happens on the macro level also happens on the micro level. So the process of the cosmos is not different from the process of the body. The cosmos goes through Srishti, Sthiti and Laya. The body goes through the three avasthas. It is more or less the same thing. Right? So you have the Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, these roughly correspond to the Srishti Sthiti Laya. You go, you sleep, there Laya happens, you wake back up, Srishti happens, and Sthiti is undergone as you are awake and transacting with the world. So the exact duplicate, it is the Jiva is the cosmos in a bottle kind of thing. So the same thing that happened, that is described here in terms of how this Shabda Brahma became threefold, the same is described in the body as well. So you have the Paravak, which then becomes Pashyanti, Madhyama and Vaikhari. So just as the Shabda Brahma has now become the Bindu, Nada and Bija. So the same is shown here. So Dehepi Mooladharesmin Samudeti Samiranaha Vivikshor Ichhayothena Prayatnena Susamskritaha Savyanjayati Tatreva Shabda Brahmati Sarvagam. So what is told here is, speech, the sound that comes out, arises out of the will of the Jiva. When the Jiva wants to speak, this through the course of the process, eventually the Sthula Shabda comes out. Just as when Brahman wants to create, through the process that has been described, eventually the Bija, the Sthula Shabda comes out. So first these two are put next to each other. And then one more thing that they have said is, the Shabda Brahma, that Shabda Brahma has become these sounds. So in every word that is spoken by the Jiva, it is the same Shabda Brahma that has come out. So it is not like the Jiva is saying something else and the Shabda Brahma is separate. It is the Shabda Brahma alone that is Vyanjyate. The word, how do we describe this in English? Vyanjyate means that is hinted at, shown at, characterized by. So we can kind of understand that word that way. So here, then they start to talk about what happens in the Mooladhara. So this sound starts at the Mooladhara. Atha tadidam karanabindvatmakam abhivyaktam Shabda Brahma. So the Shabda Brahma, which is the Karanabindu from which the other three sounds come, tattu sapratishtataya nishpandam. This does not move. There is no action associated with the Karanabindu. It is only when the Karanabindu gives rise to these three that things start happening. But the Karanabindu on its own does not do anything. All it does, it gives rise to the Karya Bindu, but it on its own does not act the way a sound acts. So, Sapratishtataya Nishpandam Tadevacha Parava Guchyate. So that is to say, there is some Chaitanya inherent in the Jiva, or that Jiva Chaitanya which is there, due to which any sound can be made. So we can take that to be the Para, the Paravak. Then the next, Atha Tadeva Nabhiparyantam Agachata Tena Pavanena Abhivyaktam Vimarsha Rupena Manasa Yuktam Samanya Spanda Prakasha Rupa Karya Bindumayam Sat Pashyantiva Guchyate. So now we have come. So now what happens is, once the Jiva wants to say something, so until now, so when during Mauna, that is to say when silence happens and the mind is also silent. So Mauna is not just silence of the body, it is silence of the mind. That is why even in Gita, when Bhagavan talks about the different forms of tapas, he says Sharirantapa Uchyate, Vachakantapa Uchyate, Vangmayantapa Uchyate, Manasantapa Uchyate. When Bhagavan talks about this, he puts Mauna, so Devadvijaguru Prajna Pujanam Shauchamarjavam Brahmacharya Mahimsacha Sharirantapa Uchyate. Then the Vachaka tapas is Anudvega Karam Vakyam Satyam Priyahitan Chayata Swadhyaya Abhyasanam Chayava Vangmayantapa Uchyate. Speaking only that which is beneficial and true, and performing study of the shastras. This is Vangmaya tapas. Then in the Manomaya tapas, he says, Manaf prasada saumyatvam maunam atma vinigraha bhava samshuddhirityeta tapo manasamuchyate. So Mauna has actually been put under Manasika tapas. Mauna is not attributed to the Vak. Mauna is attributed to the mind. Because if we say we are doing Mauna Vrata today and we are writing everything down and showing people to it, it is Namke Vaste Mauna, in the sense that you are Mauna in the sense that you don't want to talk, you want to talk, but you are forcibly restraining yourself. So the true Mauna is the silence of the mind. Because Vak, as we see, actually if we see here clearly, Vak is not just the sound that comes out. Vak starts from the desire to speak. Right? The desire to speak is also a certain form of speech. The form that we hear is the final form, it's the final form of Vak. But Vak starts way, way before. So you have the Shabda Brahma, that is the Paravak. Immediately the second that a desire comes, then the speech starts to come out properly. Right? So technically the Shabda Brahma is not exactly Vak. Right? It is Chaitanya that can also be manifest as a Shabda. But it is not like Shabda Brahma is some sound. Right, so vak comes out of the para. So if you keep the para aside, the Pashyanti, Madhyama and Vaikhari are three forms of vak starting from desire. It starts from desire until the physical sound wave that is heard. So this is the gamut of speech. So if you say that mauna is the absence of vak, it is not just absence of the last form of vak. It is absence of all these three. So that is why Bhagavan has put mauna into the manomaya tapas. So that is why here also the desire to speak is what causes the vak to move from its unmanifest state in para up to pashyanti. So there it leaves the mooladhara and it comes up to the swadhisthana. Yeah, so he is describing what it is. So it comes up to here, pavanena, because one more thing is that speech is by definition the combination of vayu and agni. So this is one more concept we have, that in the body there is an agni. Right? There is some shakti that allows the body to work, which is shown as agni. Then there is also the what we call the dynamic nature of the body to work. That is characterized as vayu, which is why all the bodily functions are called the pancha pranas. Right? When you say prana is vayu, we say that then one prana is coming up, apana is going down, samana is staying in the nabhi, then vyana sarvasharira, vyana is responsible for the entire body going around, the entire body being circulated, things in the body being circulated. Then you have the upavayus, you say that these naga, kurma, krikara, one vayu is responsible for blinking, one vayu is responsible for digestion, one vayu is responsible for vomiting. So clearly this is not done by the breeze that we see outside. But what we mean is the force of life that allows the body to carry out its functions is called vayu. Right, so when this shakti carries out its functions, it is called vayu. When it stays and radiates through the body, it is called agni. So these are the two facets that you have in the body, which is why we say that in the mooladhara there is an agni, and then vayu is going around the body. So also the word nada, also they take it the same way. The word na, the na is agni, the word da is vayu, or sorry, reverse. Na is vayu, da is agni. Their union is nada. So that is why also in the Paniniya Shiksha, they say manah kayagni mahanti saprerayati marutam. This we get in Paniniya Shiksha. So the manas pushes the winds of desire forward, that when it unites with the fire that is there in the body, then the wind actually comes out as speech. The vayu then actually comes out as speech. So this union of the manas, this union of vayu and agni is what is causing speech. That is why agnirme vachishritaha. The adhidevata of vak is agni. Even when you talk about the pancha karmendriyas, when you say the vak, pani, pada, payu, pasta, the devata of the vak is agni. So that is why agni is said to preside over speech. So in this way, now this desire has come, and this pavana, this vayu that represents the dynamic nature of speech, right? Because until now you have an unmoving Shabda Brahma. Now all of a sudden a desire has come to speak, so now motion has come into place. This motion is characterized by the vayu. So now this vayu now brings that force of the Shabda Brahma until the nabhi. So there it then comes with the vimarsha rupena manasa yuktam. So now the manas comes into place, because without the manas desire is not there. So the vayu with the manas brings this Shabda from the Mooladhara, where it is unmanifest, up to the Nabhi. There it is Samanya Spanda Prakasha Rupa Karya Bindumayam. There it is the Karya Bindumaya in the Nabhi Pradesha. There too it is Samanya Spanda Prakasha Rupa. Here, this is a desire in which you generally know what you want to speak. That is to say, when you desire to speak, you will desire to speak something, right? There is something that you wish to do with your speech. So that desire has come. But it is still samanya. The specifics of the speech have not come out yet. That is to say, if I say, for example, before I started, I wanted to ask for this Vyasapitha. So before I start to speak, so before this desire came, the desire to speak was not there. But speech was still latent in the body. That is what we can take as a para state. Then the second I realized that there is no Vyasapitha, I wish to ask for it. So the desire to ask has come. But exactly what I am going to say has not yet been decided by the mind. But the desire to speak has come. That in that I have felt that I need something, I now need to speak to get that. So this desire, which is still general, has come till the Nabhi. Then the next state is Atha Tadeva Shabda Brahma Teneva Vayuna. So the same Shabda Brahma, which has been brought up by the Vayu until the Nabhi, then keeps going. Hridaya Paryantam Abhivyajyamanam. It then comes to the Manas, the Hridaya. Right? So when it comes to the Hridaya, then Nishchayatmikaya Buddhya. So now it is not the Manas which wants and does not want, but now the Buddhi comes. Buddhi is Nishchayatmika, it starts deciding. So until now the desire to speak, the desire to convey something was there. Now the Buddhi comes and decides what the words are going to be. So before you utter a word, you know what you are going to say. You will say, I am now going to say, I want this Vyasa Petha. So these words are now, you have now decided how you are going to give voice to this desire. So the specifics have now come. That is what happens in the Hridaya. Shabda Brahma teneva vayana hridaya paryantam abhivyajyamanam nishchayatmikaya buddhya yuktam. That is why it is the Vishesha Spanda Prakasha Nadamayam. The Vishesha Spanda now has come. That is to say, the specifics of what is going to be said has now fructified in the mind. Then Sat Madhyama Vag Ityuchyate. That is why it is called Madhyama, because it is between Pashyanti and Vaikhari. So Pashyanti is called Pashyanti because you are now seeing. What am I going to say? You are now seeing it there. That is Pashyanti. Then Vaikhari is Vikhara. That meaning will also come. Khara means rough. Rough means sthula. It is gross. It is not tangible. So Visheshena Kharam Vikharam. Because it is Tasya Iyam Vaikhari Vak. So because Vak is in Strilinga, you put on some pratyayas in Samskrita on it, saying belonging to Vikhara, and now you have the rough speech that is tangible, which is Vaikhari. 2 steps before Vaikhari, you have Pashyanti, wherein the desire to speak has come, right? Even you have this in regional languages too. Chusta, no, means in Telugu. Chusta means chusta, edo okati chesta tarvata. You have not decided the specifics, but you will say, nodtini, adu nodtini, kalsan nodtini. I'll see. Means I have not yet decided the specifics, but the desire to do something is there. Right? The same thing has been taken here as Pashyanti. So the desire to speak has come in Pashyanti. The gross form has come in Vaikhari. There is a middle state wherein it is not general, but it is not gross either. So there is a specific unmanifest state. That is the Madhyama. It is between these two. So that is what Hridaya Paryantam Abhivyajyamanam Nishchayatmikaya Buddhya Yuktam Visheshaspanda Prakasha Rupa Nadamayam Sat Madhyama Vagityuchyate. What? Tadeva Shabda Brahma. So we need to keep in mind that it is that just as it is a Nirguna Paramatma who is called Brahma during Srishti, Vishnu during Sthiti, and Rudra during Laya. In the same way, it is that same Shabda Brahman that is called Para in the Mooladhara, Pashyanti in the Nabhi, Madhyama in the Hridaya, and Vaikhari in the mouth. So that is why the Bhaskara has continued to use the Napumsakalinga. Although Vak is Strilinga, Abhivyajyamanam, Hridaya Paryantagatam Sat, he is still using the Napumsakalinga because he is continuing the Shabda Brahma. He is saying that it is the Shabda Brahma that is being talked about in these names. Atha Tadeva, so now that same Shabda Brahman, now it has come to the heart. Now once it comes to the mouth, Tadeva Vadana Paryantam Teneva Vayuna. So the same Vayu that has pulled this Vak from the Mooladhara up until the Anahata, Swadhisthana, Manipura, all of that until to the mouth. Then Vayana Kantadhisthaneshu Abhivyajyamanam Akaradi Varna Rupa Param Shrotra Grahana Yogya Spashtatara Prakasha Rupa Bijatmakam Sat Vaikhari Vaguchyate. So now finally what happens is from the Hridaya it comes to the mouth through the throat. Right? Because the throat is what, so until now the Vayu has come. The Vayu does not have a vessel for it to become gross yet. Right? Whether it is in the Mooladhara or the Nabhi or the Hridaya, there is no instrument by which the Vayu becomes manifest. Right? That is the whole point of us having instruments. Vayu is always there, but you need a flute if you want a sound to come out, or you need some Nadaswara if you want a sound to come out. So this Vayu needs an instrument for it to become manifest. For the Vayu to carry this, so Vayu is like it is an Upadhi kind of, it is a vessel. So this Vayu has carried this Shabda from the Para until the Madhyama. Now for the Vayu to be able to push this Shabda into a gross form, it needs some instrument. Just as the Vayu needs an instrument to play music. Right? The same thing. That is why if you notice, not just that, but even the string instruments. There is a reason why Saraswati holds a veena. Right? There is, exactly what we get in physics class. There is a potential energy. right? Then you pull the string, that potential becomes kinetic energy, and then that becomes manifest as a sound, right? It is exactly this process that we have. There is something latent, some triggering force, and then a sound comes forth, right? That is why all our devatas, you will see that many of our devatas have instruments. Shiva has a damaru, right? The entire Panini Sutras, or the Maheshwara Sutras, all these, all of these letters are said to come from the damaru. So we have this concept that there is something unmanifest, it becomes manifest through some instrument in the middle. Krishna has a flute, Saraswati has a veena, right? There is this Dakshinamurti also has a veena, right? There is a specific form of veena, not Medha Dakshinamurti, but there is one more form of Dakshinamurti called Veena Dakshinamurti, right? So there is a reason why we have so many instruments in Sanatana Dharma, wherein through that we conceptualize that there is an unmanifest sound that becomes manifest through some instrument, which is why this body itself is called a veena. This body is called a veena in our Shabda Shastra. We say there is one shloka, Shariryāmatha veenāyām tribhya sthanebhya evacha urasah shirasah kanthat svarah kakuf pravartate. So he says this is a shariri veena. This body itself is a veena. And from three places sound comes. Urasaha from the chest, shirasaha from the head, kanthat from the throat. So here the concept of sound is slightly different. The hridaya is this Shabda Brahma that we are talking about. The shiras refers to the prayatna. Right? So when you say ka, there is a different type of usage of the limbs of the mouth. When you say dha, there is a different way that the mouth works. Right? When you say cha, there is a different set of organs that are working to produce this sound. So that is the shiras. Kantha is the instrument of the vayu. So when you say urasaha, shirasaha, kanthat, it is exactly this threefold division of, or the division of speech wherein until the uras, that is to say until the chest, it is this subtle vak that is coming. From the shiras, the specifics of how the physical sound gets expressed comes. The kantha is that final tube through which this vayu carries the sound to make it manifest. Right? So that is the concept of this body as a veena. Right? And technically, if we really want to stretch it that far, you will see this also, wherein in the veena, what happens? You have the strings bound here, right? Then you have the bridge of the strings, and then you pluck the string, right? So there are 4 strings, and then you have the shruti strings in the veena. So the strings that you pluck for different octaves, the difference in strings you can compare to the shiras. Different prayatnas that generate different sounds. Then holding it down here to when you decide which swara you want, you can take that to be the unmanifest speech that has come until the hridaya. The actual plucking of the string can be taken to be the actual throat through which the vayu comes. So if we actually look at our Indian instruments, you will see this entire concept of speech brought out so nicely. So in that same way, this vak comes from the hridaya to the vadana, to the mukha with this vayu, and their kantadhisthaneshu. So we have the akuha visarjaniyam kantha, so a, kakha, gagha, the visarga, these are all from the kantha. Ruturshana, murdha, so the tatha, dadha, this all comes from the murdha. In this we have all of this, right? So each set of letters comes from a different place. So this vayu coming from those places, akaradi varna rupa varam. So there you get the varna. It is at that point that you get the actual specifics of a, I, U, Ma, Kha, Cha, Ta, you get that. And then it becomes Shrotra Grahana Yogya, Spashtatara Prakasha Rupa. Until now it was either Avishesha or Vishesha, but now it is Spashtatara. So it was either in the Nabhi or in the Nabhi, it was unmanifest in the sense that you know why you want to speak, but you have not exactly decided the words yet. In the hridaya, you have decided the words also, but now you have the clear utterance of the words that even a listener can grasp. So in the hridaya, we can grasp our own words. That is exactly what we do when we think. Right? When we say we can hear our thoughts, or I have thought this, and sometimes we think in words. Right? So that is the hridaya, that is not observable by someone else. But once it comes here, it then becomes observable, that vak then becomes observable by someone else. If we understand this concept of how this Shabda Brahma starts as the para which is inert, then becomes dynamic from Pashyanti onwards, then attains a reasonable outline, and then becomes more specific in the throat, in the hridaya, and then comes out, we will understand what it means to be a mantra drashta. This is exactly, when we say that the rishis saw Veda mantras and gave it to us, this is exactly, so Shabda is Nitya. That is exactly what the Mimamsakas say. But then the Tarkikas came. They said, how is Shabda Nitya? Because I am saying the letter Ka. So the letter Ka has started at some point in time. Some 2 seconds later, that sound is no longer audible. So then how can you say Shabda is Nitya? That is why the Mimamsakas said that this Ka is a Dhvani, it is not Shabda. That is to say, they made one difference wherein this Ka is a manifestation of some higher Ka. There is a different Ka that is permanent. Otherwise, we will not be able to say, if I say Ka now, and then I say Ka 1 hour later, I should not be able to say the same Kakara that I said now, I said an hour ago. So there is one Kakara that manifests as an audible sound. So it is not the audible sound that we say is the Nitya Varna, that the Mimamsakas call the Nitya Shabda, but the Nitya Shabda manifests as these audible sounds. So it is exactly that unmanifest sound that is latent across this Srishti that the rishis see with their tapas. They see that, and just as we said here, that unmanifest desire to speak does also have a corresponding manifest form. So these Veda mantras are basically the physical manifestation of that unmanifest sound that goes across. So when we say that the rishis anvichan devas tapasa shramena, it says, the Veda says. So through tapas and shrama, these rishis saw that vak and gave it to us. See, if the Veda was only the sound that we, if this is what Veda is, then why do you need tapas and shrama to figure this out? We are all understanding this so easily. So clearly the tapas and shrama is not to figure out the physical manifestation. The tapas is needed to get the avyakta state. So for us also, if we have to trace out the words that we utter back to the desire to speak, where did the desire to speak come from? If we have to trace it back there, that is exactly what dhyana is. Right? We see that whenever anyone went to Ramana Maharshi, and they say, who am I? They will say, you trace where this I came from. Where did this question come from? You trace it back. Because speech, the line is, manifest speech is there. This manifest speech comes from unmanifest speech. Unmanifest speech comes from desire. This desire is put into place from somewhere. That from somewhere is what you are trying to find. So this sequence is what the rishis have realized, that there is some latent shabda that is avyakta across this jagat. These truths of what the world actually are, of reality, the sound of reality also has a corresponding manifest form. That is what the Veda mantra is. That is why it is not like Veda. That is why you cannot change the Anupurvi of Veda. The reason why we say that the Swara of Veda cannot change and the letters of Veda cannot change is because it is a very specific manifestation. Right? Just as if I want to say come in Telugu, if I want to say come, there is the desire to speak has to come out. If I say, instead of ra, if I say po, that obviously does not, I said, no, what is it? I only changed it, right? The desire is the same. No, that desire that I have to speak has a very particular counterpart when it comes to speech. And in the same way, if my desire is to command, ra, right? There is a particular way, if I say ra, like that is no longer what I wanted to convey, right? So there is a particular sound, that is to say a letter and a swara that will correspond to the unmanifest state of that sound. Who are we to decide what that unmanifest thing is telling us? The rishis know, which is why they have given us the exact transcript. The exact transcript is the Veda mantra of the sound and the swara. So we are not allowed to touch that at all. And this is exactly why the concept of adhikara for Veda comes. Right? Obviously today everyone says, why can't everyone tell Veda? So the point is, then why can't everyone do mantras also? Right? If we are accepting that everyone needs Upadesha to do a mantra, then you also have to accept that you need Upadesha to do Veda mantras. And for that the body needs some samskara. So if you are trying to give voice to the latent sound of this universe, you cannot just take up YouTube, Google Gayatri mantra and start telling it. And there is a particular process, there is a particular purity to that process that has to be maintained. Now, this would be wrong if we say that you are not allowed to know what this truth of the universe is. We never said that. All you're saying is, if you wish to reproduce this sound, you have to do certain things. So certain people, you do this and you keep the sound intact. What that sound is teaching us, everyone come, we will teach you all of that. So the concept of why the chanting of Veda mantras is so strictly regulated versus the meaning of Veda mantras has been told in Sanatana Dharma in such an extensive way. Right? Because the meaning of Veda mantras is not just the Veda Bhashya. Veda's meaning is the Puranas, Itihasas, Dharma Shastra, Tantra, all of this exists solely to tell us what Vedas are telling us, right? So the reason why so much effort has been taken to explain Veda while keeping Veda so strictly regulated is exactly this. The Avyakta Shabda, when it becomes Vyakta, has a very particular process. The sanctity of that process has to be preserved, which is why the way that that sound is told by the human mouth is so rigidly regulated. So if we understand what speech is in Sanatana Dharma, you will understand what Veda is and why it has the stature that it does. Right? Veda is not just some book that was compiled by some prophet many years ago. Right? If that was the case, then yeah, you can say, yeah, what is it? This is a book, that is a book. But that is not at all the way that we are conceiving of Veda. Shabda, the nature of Shabda is exactly this. So just as this is the voice of the Jiva, so when this speech that we have spoken about is how the Jiva speaks. What about Paramatma? So that latent desire of Paramatma to speak, that is to say act, is what we call the Veda. Which is why the Upanishad also describes Veda as tasyaiva mahato bhutasya nishvasitam yadeda drigveda javeda samaveda tharvangirasaha. Just as this desire to speech is so latent in the Jiva, in the same way the Paramatma's breath is the Veda. So it is not like the Paramatma sits, there is a lump of clay and he makes the Vedas. Just as the desire to speak is latent within the Jiva, so too this giving rise to the Vedas means that the Vedas were latent within Paramatma. Which is why what the Vedantins say is that Paramatma does not write the Vedas. Paramatma remembers the Vedas of the last Kalpa and reproduces it exactly in the beginning. Right? Just as the desire that was previously existent is given voice to again. That is exactly what happens when Paramatma also gives voice to the Vedas. So if we, just as I said earlier, if we understand what is happening in the level of the Jiva, you will understand what is happening on the level of the cosmos. So in this way, the Para, Pratyak, Madhyama and Vaikhari have all come. And here, very nicely, Bhaskararaya quotes Bhagavad Pada. So as we know, the Prapanchasara Tantra is a very important text of Bhagavad Pada. So Bhagavad Pada wrote many stotras, obviously many Vedantic texts. But Bhagavad Pada also felt it necessary that the Tantric Sampradaya should also be explained properly. Right? So in this, Bhagavad Pada does not start off just saying, here is Dakshinamurti, here is the mantra, here is the Anganyasa, here is Devi, here is Panchadashi, here is the Anganyasa. So before he does all that, Bhagavad Pada talks about the nature of the mantras. So the nature of the mantras are described. And many inner meanings are given. For example, one thing that we know is, those of us who have mantras, we know that we say Rishi, Devata, Chandas, or Rishi, Chandas, Devata. Right? That is how you'll say this Rishi, this Chandas, this Devata. Right? So why is it that those places are chosen? Hey, the Rishi can be anywhere, the Devata you can say Rishi, Devata, Chandas. What is stopping you from that? So very nicely there Bhagavad Pada writes the meaning. The Rishi is on the head because he is the guru for this mantra. It is a sampradaya that the Guru Padas are supposed to be meditated upon in the Sahasrara. So even in this we get in many places that Devi in the Sahasrara is Guru Murti. So because the Guru is, the Rishi is the person who has instructed this mantra, so he is the Guru. So he is on the head. The Chandas is the Akshara Swarupa of the mantra. The verbal laya of the mantra is called Chandas. That is uttered through the mouth. So you put the Chandas in the mouth. The Devata is Hrididhyeya. So you put the Devata in the heart. So this is why Rishi, Devata, Rishi, Chandas, Devata. So all of these things Bhagavad Pada explains in the beginning. And there also he says that these mantras exactly, if you notice, that is why, what did we say was the name of the sthula form of speech? Bija. So when we say Bija Akshara, what do we mean? There is some subtle tattva that has become manifest as this letter. So if you say Ram, Ksham, as you said, right, the Bijas of the Panchabhuta, Ham for Akasha, Ram for Agni, Lam for Prithivi, right? So all of these are, it is not that Ram is Agni. There is some tattva of Agni that is latent in the Jagat. That tattva, when you give voice to it, becomes Ram. So this is what our rishis have seen, which is why again, there too when discussing the nature of, that is why Bhagavad felt it necessary to discuss the nature of speech and letters before going on to these mantras which are comprised of bija aksharas. So there he writes one nice shloka that summarizes all of this, and after writing all this, Bhaskara Raya also quotes that. Taduktam acharyaihi. Acharya is shankaracharya here. He quotes that, Mooladharat prathamamuditaha yascha bhavav parakhyah paschat pashyanti atha hridayage buddhiyuk madhyamakhya vyakte vaikharyatha rurudisho rasya janto sushumna baddha tasmad bhavati pavana prerita varna sanya. So there are some pathabhedas also to this, but if we see this, Mooladharat prathama mudito yascha bhavaha parakhyah. So this sound, this bhava means entity. Tattva, bhava, vastu, padartha, these all mean the same thing. So this entity that starts off in the Mooladhara as para. And very incidentally, there is a pathandra of this. Instead of yascha bhavaha, they have taken it one more pathandra, yascha taraf parakhyah. Those of you who are familiar with the Tantra Sampradaya will know that the Tara means Onkara. That is why in the Ganesha Upanishad, Tarena Riddham Etattava Manuswarupam, that is Om Ganganapataya Namaha, Tarena Riddham. This mantra also has the Tara in front of it. Right? So that Tara, and incidentally there is one more Devata. So in the Dashamaha Vidyas, the Vidya that corresponds to speech is called Tara. The Tara Devata is the Devata of speech. So one of the upasanas, the main fruit of the upasana of Tara is speech, which is why even the Buddhists used to have the upasana of Tara in a slightly different way. There are many, Neela, Saraswati, all of these things are also there. But the Devata of speech is also called Tara. When you meditate upon, the Dashamahavidyas are just one Parashakti meditated upon in many different ways. So when you meditate upon that Parashakti as speech, she is meditated upon as Tara, because this Tara is the Onkara. So that first latent sound that was there. So there is a latent Shabda that pervades this world. That pervasion also would have come from a certain point, right? Because the Jagat is coming from a point. So whatever is latent in the Jagat must have been there in the point. So that sound that was latent in that point, which is what we call the Karana Bindu, is exactly that Onkara. So that is why when you say that from Onkara all Shabda comes, this is what we mean. So that is why one more part has Yascha Taraha. It is that same Onkara, which is the unmanifested, that is there in the Mooladhara. Then Paschat Pashyanti. So from there it comes up as Pashyanti till the Nabhi. Atha Hridayage Buddhiyuk Madhyamakhya. So Pashyanti is the desire. The second that desire comes up to the Hridaya and joins with the Buddhi, then it is called Madhyama. Right? Then Vaktre Vaikhari. In the Vaktra, that is in the face, in the mouth, she is Vaikhari. One more patha is there, Vyakte Vaikhari. When it becomes Vyakta, it is Vaikhari. Vaikhari, Atha Rurudisho Rasya Jantoho. So Rurudishoha means the desire to cry is Rurudisha. Just as the desire to go, Jigamisha, desire to know, Jignyasa, desire to eat, Bubuksha, the desire to cry is Rurudisha. It is not exactly crying, but to cry out we can take. The desire of the Jantu, the being who wishes to speak, Sushumna Baddhaha. So one more thing Bhagavad has put here is, from the Para till here it is a Sushumna that pulls it up. The Vayu takes it up via the Sushumna. Sushumna Baddha Tasmat. Here also there are two parthas. Bhavati Pavane Preritaha Varna Sanyaha. So these various Varnas are incited by the Pavana. One more Patha is Pavarna Prerito Varna Sangha. The Varna Sangha, the entire gamut of these Varnas are pushed forward by the Pavana. Now if we understand this also, we will understand why each chakra has various letters associated with it. And especially Bhagavad Pada said here that this goes till the Sushumna. So what is the nature of the chakra in the Sushumna? All the Varnas are written on that. Right? This would have come, I think, in N.V. Sir's talk also a couple of days ago, that in the Sahasrara, the lotus of the Sahasrara will have all the Varnas written on it. So we see so many connections between Vedanta, Shabda Shastra, Mantra Shastra, Tantra, and then also Yoga Shastra. These are all so irrecoverably linked. And the beauty is that this is also not a coincidence. It is because it is one concept that Vedanta is viewing from here, Yoga is viewing from here, and Tantra is viewing from here. So at some point they will all end up talking about the same thing. So in this way, Bhagavad in the Prapanchasara Tantra is very nicely in one shloka summarized how this Shabda goes from Para till Vaikhari. So then if we understand this, the rest of the name, the Bhaskaraya does not write much for Madhyama, Vaikhari, Rupa, he does not write much there. I think for Vaikhari, he does write one thing. Madhyama Vaikhari. Yeah, he writes like that. Vishesha Rupena Kharaha Katinaha Tasya Iyam Vaikhari. So that speech which is specifically tangible or rough that you can see is called Vaikhari. So in that. And then Paradevata Madhyama Vaikhari Rupa. No other Vishesha is really written there. So in this way, in these few, if we understand these few names of Lalitā Sahasranama, from Para to Vaikhari Rupa, the entire essence of speech has been told. So this is one nice thing. One more thing that we commonly have, Sandhyavandana, obviously. Anahata Nada is that as soon as it comes here, in the Chakra Sadhana, if you are bringing the Kundalini until here, that Nada that was latent in the Mooladhara that you could not hear until then, you will start hearing. Because this Ahata Nada is, we said, Manah Kayagni Mahanti. This Ahanana, the act of hitting is the act of desire. So only from that, so desire or action sound will come. This para sound is not a sound that comes off action or desire. So that sound itself is called anahata. In this chakra, you will hear that sound. That sound becomes audible the second that kundalini comes here. So it is called anahata. In this way, the entire gamut of sound has been showed. Then one more thing, just for fun, one more thing that we can look at is Sandhyavandana. So obviously Sandhyavandana we are all very interested in. Whether we do it or not, we are very interested in it at least. So that sequence also comes. Gayatri Vyahritis Sandhya Dvijabrinda Nishevita. This sequence of names tells us what Sandhyavandana is. And Sandhyavandana is not only for Brahmana boys. It is not only for male Brahmanas. It is obviously for everyone. Only difference, as you said earlier, is the way that you are supposed to do it will change. If you are a male Dvija, the way that you do it is different. But this Sandhya Upasana, worship of Devi during the Sandhya time is universal. Which is why Vyasa Maharshi has felt it necessary to put these four names in sequence. Gayatri, Vyahritihi, Sandhya, Vijabrinda Nishevita. So first, Gayatri. What is this Gayatri? Obviously we know that people, this is one confusion that people have. So this Gayatri, we say that in Sandhyavandana we do Gayatri mantra japa. But when you tell the mantra, you say Savita Devata. So is it you call it Gayatri mantra, but then you say Savita, and then obviously the sun is talked about. Is this Savita the same as the sun? Is the Savita Gayatri? Where is Gayatri? Where is the sun? So all this clarification will come here in the Bhashya also. Bhaskararaya very nicely gives us that. So Gayatri, first of all, he starts off Chaturvimshatyaksharan Chando Gayatri. The meter of 24 letters is called Gayatri. So as we know, the Vedic meters are 7. Anushtup, Trishtup, Brihati, Jagati, Gayatri. In this way, there are 7 Vedic meters. Ushnik, so these are all 7 Vedic meters. These are the 7 horses of the sun. Right? When you say that Surya, if you look at Surya itself, Surya, his body is that of the Vedas, which is why you get that mantra, Mandalagam Sarucham Lokaha. The mandala of the Surya is all the ring mantras. Then in the middle of that is the Purusha. Then you have the Sama mantras also. The Tejas, the Mahas, within that are the Sama mantras. The Mandala are the Rig mantras. The Purusha, the entity within the orb of the sun, is the manifestation of the Yajur mantras. Right? So this is the body of the sun is the Veda. So then how is Veda brought forward? That is to say, what are the horses of the chariot are the 7 Vedic Chandases. Right? So there are also Bhujagayamita Saptataragaha. The 7 reins of the horses are all snakes. So all this has a very nice esoteric meaning, which we can see later. But the way that Chandases are divided they are divided by letter. So it will called Prathamam Chandaha, is the Chandas that is one letter. So this Prathama Chandas is of twofold. There is one Guru and one Laghu. So you have letters. Right? A long heavy letter is called a Guru. A light short letter is called a Laghu. So these Guru Laghu combinations form Chandas. So then you will have the second Chandas. This second Chandas will have 4 meters within it. Guru Laghu, Laghu Guru. Or it will have two Chandas within. Guru Laghu, Laghu Guru. So these are 2 meters within the second Chandas. Then the third one you will get. There obviously you will get, you will have Guru, Laghu, Laghu, Guru, Laghu, Guru, 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 Laghu, all these combinations will come. So, in the 8th chandas, that is to say, the 8th chandas is that chandas which has 8 letters in a line. So, chandases are based on lines. So, that which has 8 letters to a line, the blueprint for this chandas is called Gayatri. Which is why, in Veda also, you will see that Gayatri will just have 8 letters. This Guru, Laghu and all will not be as rigid as it is. Whereas that is not the case for this Trishtup and all. Trishtup and all will be in particular. But Gayatri is both a specific chandas as well as the blueprint of all the meters that have 8 letters. Which is why Ashtakshari, Tripada Shatkukshihi. So 8, and then Gayatri, one interesting component of Gayatri is that it is 3-lined. Usually you will have 4 lines. In Anushtup, for example, Anushtup is 8-lettered. There you will have 4 lines. Gayatri has 3 lines. There is actually a 4th line, but the japa of that 4th line is reserved for sannyasis. So brahmacharis and grihasthas are only supposed to do the first 3 lines. So there, that is why it says Gayatri Chandasamaham. That is why Bhagavan says that out of all the meters I am Gayatri in Gita. And then he quotes one more thing. Gayatri Chandasamasi. Someone while doing stuti of Devi in the Purana, in the Kurma Purana, says that you are the Gayatri amongst all the chandases. So as we thought earlier, Bhaskaraya has this tendency of, in some Purana, if someone glorifies Vishnu as Paramatma, he will take that Vakya and apply it to Devi. In some Shiva Purana, some Vakya will come describing Shiva as Paramatma. He will take that and apply it to Devi. So the point is that he recognizes very clearly that the Paramatma discussed as Shiva there, the Paramatma discussed as Narayana here is no different than the Paramatma discussed here as Devi. So, which is why here also he clearly says, Krishna has said, Gayatri Chandasam Aham. And then Kurma Purana, someone is praising Devi and saying, Gayatri Chandasam Asi. And he is saying, these both are referring to the same entity. He has told that here. Yadva Gayatriyakhya Gopakanya Brahmana Kanishtapatni. Then he talks about certain avatars of Devi. So there is some story wherein Brahma and Vishnu are going to a yajna. So there one person was supposed to come. They did not come. They are getting late. So then Brahma finds one Gopakanya and then Vishnu says, just take her and come. So then Brahma marries her through Gandhar Vivaha. Basically holding the hand is the marriage. And then they go. Her name is Gayatri. This we don't have to treat as some very great bhashya. It is just... he is just repeating a story that is there in Purana. Then, Athava, then he comes to the Devata Gayatri. Athava, Gayantam Trayate Yasmat Gayatri Tena Kathyate iti Gayatri Kalpe Bharadvaja Smrityukta Nirvajanat Vedamatari Prasiddho Gayatri Shabdaha. So, there is one Devata called Gayatri who is the manifestation and the mother of the Vedas. Vedamata Gayatri. So, when we look at Gayatri in that sense, now it is very easy to see the identity with Devi. So she has 5 faces. She has 5 faces. From each of those, the 4 Vedas plus Pranava comes. Same concept as Shiva's 5 faces. Shiva's 5 faces, what are they? The 4 faces on the bottom are the 4 Vedas. The Urdhva Mukha, the upper face is the Pranava. So one thing that when Devatas have 5 faces, we should not draw it like Ravanasura, where all of them are in one line. Devatas' faces are always multifaceted. Right, the same goes for Panchamukha Hanuman also. When you draw the Panchamukhi Hanuman, the Vande Vanara Narasimha Garad Krodasha Vakranchitam, when you read that, for us to see all the 4 faces in a movie, the actor will attach 2 faces here. But if you look at the actual Devata, it will be monkey here, then horse, boar. Hayagriva is the Urdhva Mukha. Hayagriva is the top facing one, then Narasimha, Garuda, all of this will come. So, in the same way, Gayatri's 5 faces are the 5 Vedas, each has a color, all of that is there. So it is that Gayatri. Why is she called Gayatri? Because when you sing that mantra, that is, when you tell that mantra, she will protect you. Gayantam Trayate. She protects those who say her mantra. This is exactly what we say for the word mantra also, Mananat Trayate. So basically this Gayatri is that mantra which is the template for all other mantras. Right? All Vedas come from Gayatri. And all mantras come from the Vedas. So, the Veda mantras are the embodiments of Gayatri. Because Gayatri protects that which protects that person who sings her mantra. In the same way, the mantras also protect those people who tell them. So, in that sense, we get that also. So, then we get one more thing that the next line is Vyahritihi. So, where does Gayatri start from? Tatsavituhu. From there, Gayatri starts. Then Vyahriti comes. So Vyahriti means speech. Vacham Vyaharati. He speaks. Which is why Vyavahara means transaction. Actually, earlier when we talked about the 4 types of speech, there he quotes the Veda mantra. Chatvari vak parimita padani tani vidurbrahmana ye manishinaha guhatrini nihitani angayante turiyam vacho manushya that Veda mantra is there. So Chatvari vak parimita padani. Veda is vak is split fourfold. Tani vidur brahmana ye manishanaha. Those people who have that intelligence will know that. Guha tri nihita nengayanti. Three forms, para pashyanti and madhyama, are guha nihitani. They are hidden away in an unmanifest state. Turiyam vacho manushya vadanti. That fourth form is what people speak. So that speech is called Vyahriti. So Vyahriti means Vyavahara Rupa. Vyavaharanam Ucharanam. Ucharanam. Ucharana means the actual utterance of words. So that speech is Devi's form. That is to say, she is of the form of Vaikhari. But then he tells Mantra Visheshova. So then you get to the actual Vaikhari that is paired with Gayatri. The Bhur Bhuvasvaha. Right? We get this. Actually, we get it twofold. When you do Japa, we say Bhur Bhuvasvaha. Tatsavitur. We get that. But when you do Pranayama, Bhuhu, Bhuvaha, Swaha, Mahajanaha, Ogam, Satyam, you get all of that. So then both of these are called Vyahritis. Right? Which is why in Ramayana, just because we are looking at these connections, we say that the Gayatri mantra is that Trijata Swapna. Right? The Trijata Swapna is the Gayatri mantra of Ramayana. How that is Gayatri is actually very beautiful. So in that, in one part of the dream, so basically Trijata's dream has 4 parts. In one, Rama is on a palanquin that has hamsas, swans. On the next one, she is on an elephant. In the next one, she is on a chariot pulled by, Rama is on a chariot pulled by 8 vrishabhas, 8 bulls. In the last one, he is in a palanquin that does not have any vahana. So basically, these first 3 are the first 3 padas of Gayatri, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. The one without any vahana is the Nirguna Paramatma, that is in the 4th pada, that sannyasis worship. So in this, Rama is in Rathena Ashtayujasaha, a chariot pulled by 8 bulls. So that is the Om Bhuhu, Om Bhuvaha, Om Suvaha, Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha, Om Satyam. Those 8 Vyahritis are the 8 bulls that are pulling the chariot containing, that is to say, the Gayatri mantra, in which the Paramatma Tattva, that is to say, Rama, is sitting. So Rama is in the chariot pulled by the 8 bulls. That is to say, Paramatma is in the Gayatri mantra, which is characterized by these Vyahritis, the 7 Vyahritis plus Onkara. So when we say that these are the 8 Vyahritis, we mean that these are the lokas. These 7 Vyahritis are the 7 lokas. As we said, sound manifests as form. So if we have the Onkara, from the Onkara these Vyahritis come. There is that Paramatma from which the lokas come. I think at this point we can make the connection ourselves. So these are the Vyahritis that are attached before the Gayatri mantra. So the Bhurbha Swaha are not they are not part of the Gayatri mantra. When you do Japa though, it is the 3 that are taken, because we also say 3 lokas. Sapta lokas are told, 3 lokas are also told. This is just how you divide the categorical universe. But when you take 3, then Bhuhu, Bhuvaha, Swaha. These 3 are taken. Swaha, Suvaha, both are there. But when you do, depending on what you are doing, when you will say either Suvaha or Swaha. So that we don't have to get into now. But those are the Vyahritis. So now Gayatri and Vyahriti. When do I worship this Gayatri with the Vyahritis? And what is the nature of these Gayatris of the Vyahritis? There we get Sandhya. So there, Sandhya. So what is this Sandhya? You are supposed to be doing Vandana to it 3 times a day. So what is this Sandhya? Adityavachinna chaitanyasya swasya cha abheda bhavanam sandhya padarthaha. It's very clear. Sandhya is not even a time or a place or an entity. It is a bhavana. It is a state of mind. What is that state of mind? Adityavachinna chaitanyasya. The Chaitanya of Surya. What this Chaitanya of Surya is, I think you would have heard a couple of days ago in the anecdote of Chandrasekhara Bharati Mahaswamiji, where someone goes and says, why did we do Sandhyavandana to the sun? It could not be a Jada Padartha. Then the Jagadguru says, correct, it is not a Jada Padartha. Then there must be some Chaitanya within that which is taking upon the orb as the body. Okay, correct. So that is what you are worshipping. But if it has a body, that means it is a Jiva. Which means if it is embodied, if it is Sarva Vyapaka taking on a body, that is Paramatma. But if it is an entity that is confined to a body, then it must be a Jiva. So then it is not Paramatma. You are correct. Therefore, it must be something bigger than the sun, which is also taking upon the sun as a body. Correct, that is Ishvara. But it will take upon this body to do something, that is to say, to do Srishti Sthiti Laya, it will become Ishvara. But that is only when the body is there, when the Jagat is there. So then what do you call it when the Jagat is not there? Its true identity is that which is permanent. Right? So I have an identity as a human. When a child is born, then I am called a father. But by birth I am not a father. Right? You are a father with regards to the son. In the same way, Paramatma is Ishvara with regards to the Jagat. But he must have some tattva independent of that. So that, correct, that is what you are calling Parabrahman. So in this way, the Jagadguru took the Shishya from seeing the sun as a flaming ball of gas until realizing that it is actually Paramatma that you are doing bhavana of. So that Adityavachinna Chaitanya, that Chaitanya that you are trying to know through Aditya, that and Swasyacha of the Upasaka, the Abheda Bhavanam, the idea that there is no difference between this Chaitanya within the Jiva and the Chaitanya that is there within Aditya, that Abheda Bhavana is Sandhya. It is not that in the Sandhya time you do Sandhyavandana, or Sandhya is a particular time, that this Sandhya refers to the Sandhi, the unity of the Jiva and Ishvara. So this we get in Sandhyavandana every day. Someone once asked me, if Advaita is the Tatparya of all of our shastras, then why are we drilled Dvaita every day? Right? Every day you are saying, I am doing Avahana, Asana, I am worshipping you, Papoham, Papa Karmaham. Why are we doing all of this? Why could not they have taught us Advaita every day? I said, who said that they did not? You are being told, Sayaschayam Purushe, Yaschasavaditye, Sa Ekaha, Saya Evam Vit. In Upanishad you are supposed to do this every day. Forget about that in Sandhyavandana. Sayaschayam Asavadityo Yohamasmi. Right? That line also we get in Sandhyavandana. Whatever is that in this Aditya, I am that. You are being taught to tell this 3 times a day. Who told you that Advaita is not being enforced every day? It is being enforced. It is just that for us, Sandhyavandana is tu mantra and you run and you go. You are not paying attention to what you are saying. But if you say this, Asavadityo Brahma, Aham Brahma, you are told this, Asavadityo Brahma, Aham Brahma. It is, I don't know how much more clear Sandhyavandana could be. Right? So there is no doubt at all that our rishis have enforced this Advaita Bhavana. And it is this Advaita Bhavana that is called Sandhya. And now, 2 meanings of Sandhya are given. So there are 2 dhatus, dhyai chintayam. So to think, dhyai is the dhatu. That is where you get dhyana from. There is also sandadhati, sandhiyate. That means to unite. This is a different dhatu. So you can get the word Sandhya from both of these. Good meditation is Sandhya. That is exactly why we said it is a bhavana. It is not a sound. Then Sandhya means Sandhi Yogya. That time which is beneficial to Sandhi. So then if you take Sandhya as that which is beneficial to Sandhi, then it means that time. Because it is in that time that you are supposed to meditate upon this. If you take Sandhya to mean Samyak Dhyanam Sandhya, that is to say proper meditation is Sandhya, then it refers to the meditation of or the bhavana of this Jiva Brahmekya. If you take it to mean Sandhyai Hita, Sandhaye Hita Sandhya, if you take it that way, then it will become that time period within this dhyana is particularly beneficial, or that time period which is very conducive to this bhavana. Because what is happening there? Night is merging into day, or in the morning, day is merging into night, which is why Parameshwara, Shiva is worshipped in the Pradosha Kala, which is why Narasimha came out in the Sandhya Kala, right? Both of these forms of Paramatma, in fact, this Narasimha is the embodiment of that Sandhya Tattva. Not man, not animal, in the middle. Not outside, not inside, in the Sandhi of those two. Right? The entire concept of Narasimha is that if we understand Narasimha, we will understand the Sandhya and the Brahma Tattva. The concept of Narasimha is, or the concept of Sandhya is that it pervades dualities, but it is not either. This Sandhya is neither morning nor night, but it touches both. Right? It is, you cannot say it is not morning and not night, but at the same time it kind of is both at the same time. In the same way, Narasimha is also, he is technically a Nara, technically a Simha, but he is neither Nara nor a Simha. So that Tattva of Paramatma wherein it envelopes all the Dvaitas, or it is present in all the Dvaitas, but it itself is not touched by any of those dualities. That concept of Paramatma which we see in Narasimha is also that which is in this Sandhya. So there he quotes Mahabharata. So this bhavana of the Paramatma in Surya and the Atma within you as one, that is being shown in Mahabharata. Sandhyeti Suryagam Brahma Sandhya Nada Vibhagataha Brahmadyai Sakalair Bhutei Sadamshai Satchidatmanaha tasya dasohamasmiti sohamasmiti yamatihi. So there are both feelings are done. First you worship the sun, which is why in the Gayatri mantra you have dhiyo yonah prachodayat tasya yad bhargaha. That tejas of the sun, may that compel my mind in the right place, may drive my mind towards righteous thoughts. So there clearly you are praying to Surya Bhagavan as Paramatma. You are Paramatma, I am the Jiva, you are above me, you control me. So yo vijnanad antaraha, yo vijnanam antaro yamayati. Right, in the Antaryami Brahmana we get this in the Brihadaranyaka. He who being within the buddhi controls the buddhi and pushes it. Right, so that Paramatma who is above the Jiva, tasya dasosmi. First you say, I am the Jiva doing upasana of that. Later on it will become sohamasmi iti yamatihi. The Chaitanya, the Jiva is subservient to the Ishvara. But the Chaitanya of the Jiva is no different than the Chaitanya of Ishvara. So asmiti yamatihi bhaved upasakasyeti hyevam vedavido viduhu. This is the nature of Sandhya. And then one more thing. So then this Sandhya is also the Gayatri mantra. So then what do? Tad abheda bhavat iyamapi Sandhya. So the Gayatri that was discussed earlier is not different from this Sandhya that is being discussed here. So what is the Sandhya here? Either that time period or that feeling of, or that bhavana of Aikya. Because this Gayatri is not different from this feeling, she is called Sandhya. Tadabhedat. Tadabhedat means Sandhya bhedat iyamapi. Gayatri api Sandhya. So this concept of Gayatri as the Vedamata is that Devata that is the manifestation of this bhavana. So that is why it is said, Nabhinnam pratipadyeta Gayatrim Brahmana saha. That Brahman, which is the object of meditation in the Sandhya, is not different from Gayatri. Sa aham asmit yupasita vidhina yena kenachit. Through yena kenachit, through some way or the other, you should meditate upon Gayatri in this way. Which is why yena kenachit, because this has come, we will talk about one thing. As I said, worship of the Sandhya through the Sandhyavandana karma and Gayatri mantra is what has been told for Dvija Purushas. That is not to say that Sandhyavandana is not there for anyone else. There is a reason why the mantra, the first mantra of Devi Bhagavata, is given as a Gayatri mantra for everyone to tell. Sarva Chaitanya Rupam Tam Adyam Vidyancha Dhimahi Buddhim Yanaf Prachodayat. Exactly like Gayatri, it is 3 lines, 8 letters each, and the last line is also more or less the same. So the point is that this is a Gayatri mantra that can and ideally should be told by everyone in the Sandhya Kala. You can happily do japa of this. And in case you want to get the Gayatri mantra with those words also, there is a shloka that has been told. And this is there in part of the usual Sandhyavandana also. Yo devas savitasmakam dhiyo dharmadi gocharaf prerayet tasya yadbhargaha tadvarenyam upasmahe. This actually will give you the meaning of the Gayatri also. So, Yo devas savita. Devaha means prakasha swarupa, Chaitanya swarupa. Yo devas savita. He is called Savita because sute. He gives rise to things, so he is called Savita. Which is why the mother is called Savitri. One name of the mother is Savitri, Prasuhu. The same root is taken. So that deity is called Savita because his true nature is Devaha, pure prakasha Chaitanya. But he also gives rise to this Jagat, so he is called Savita. Yo devas savita asmakam dhiyaha dharmadi gocharaha prerayet. He incites our buddhi towards dharma, or we pray that he may push our buddhi towards dharma. Tad varenyam bhargaha, his illustrious tejas, that upasmahe, we meditate upon that. So the meaning of the Gayatri mantra is there in this. The words of the Gayatri mantra are also there in this. So it is not at all the case that the Gayatri mantra is somehow, the Gayatri mantra that occurs in the Veda is for the people who do Sandhyavandana in this way. But worship of Gayatri as Savitri during the Sandhya Kala is something that has been given to everyone and that should be done. Which is why Dvija Brinda Nishevita, later that comes. So this is the Gayatri in this Sandhya time that is being meditated upon by all these Dvijas. And so this is the Sandhyavandana meaning that has come. So then one last thing that we can look at is the one more meaning, beautiful meaning has been given for Dvija Brinda Nishevita, wherein the word Dvija also means a bird, that which is born twice. So these people are all called Dvijas because you are born from your mother, and then the Upanayana is treated as one more Janma. So they are Dvija. Birds and snakes are also called Dvija because they are born from the mother and then out of the egg. So they are also Dvijas. So Dvija Brinda Nishevita means she is the Paramatma who is. So Nishevana not only means service. Nishevana is Ni Sevana. because there is an ikara in the upasarga before, it becomes sha. So nishevana becomes, the shakara comes because there is an ikara in the upasarga before it. So she who is served by the dvijas. This we get in the Sandhyavandana when all these people are doing upasana. But when you take the meaning dvija to mean bird, nishevana also means to go to something. That is why it is called tirtha sevanam. Going from to all these punya kshetras, it is called tirtha sevanam. Right? Sad vidvan upasevyatam. Aharahas tat paduka sevyatam. This comes in the Manisha Panchaka. So sevyatam is used in a meaning. Sadvidvan upasevyatam. Go to a vidvan. And then aharahas tat paduka sevyatam. Then serve. Their sevyatam means serving. So in the same way, this sevana also means to go to something. So here Dvijabrinda Nishevita means she who is reached by all the Dvijas, all the birds. So what do all the birds reach? Here the birds refer to the Jivas. Very beautifully he has picked one reference from the Brihadaranyaka Tad yathasmin akashe shyenova supernova viparipatya shrantaha samhatya pakshau sallalayaiva dhriyate evameva ayam purushaha etasma antaya dhavati yatra supto nakanchana kamang kamayate nakanchana swapnam pashyati ato somya tada sampan, and then this is one thing, and then later ato somya sampanno bhavati. So basically here the Brihadaranyaka has given one meaning, one simile. So just as a bird, it gets up early in the morning, the first being to get up is the bird. So this eagle, there's then Shyenova Suparnaha, a nice Garuda Pakshi, a nice eagle. It has gotten up in the morning. It has flown since morning. It has roamed everywhere, Sannipatya. It has gone everywhere. Then finally Shrantaha, Pakshanaha Shrantaha, Sancharayana Shrantaha. They travel, they run around, they fly around from one place to the other the whole day. At some point they get tired. Then they Sannipatya, they come to one place. Pakshau, what is it? Pakshau Sankochya, they fold in their wings. And then Sallayaiva Dhriyate, at some point they then come back to their nest and they rest. So this bird, this eagle has gotten up in the morning, has roamed everywhere, at some point gets tired of roaming, comes back to one place, is tired and gets rest there. In the same way, the Guru is explaining the Upanishad, this Purusha, having done all the vyavaharas, he goes from place to place in the Jagrata Avastha. He wakes up, he goes somewhere in the morning, he goes to school, he goes to office, then he goes to tuition, then he goes to the market, he gets things, he does this, he goes here, he goes there, he does so many things. At some point, he gets tired of dealing with the outside world, and then he sleeps. When he sleeps there, nakanchana kamang kamayate. There are no more desires in that sushupti. Right? Yatra, there are no more dreams there. There are no more dreams. There are no more desires. He only sleeps. In the same way, that entity into which he merges when he sleeps is Paramatma. So now, when you say that Devi is Dvijabrinda Nishevita, so now the Jiva is the bird. Just as the bird roams everywhere, the Jiva also, when he wakes up, does so many things. At the end of the day, the bird gets tired. The Jiva also gets tired and he sleeps. The bird comes and rests in the nest. So wherever it is that the Jiva rests at night in Sushupti, that is Devi who is Dvijabrinda Nishevita. Where does he rest? He rests in Sushupti. What is the Sushupti? He rests in his Swarupananda. Right? He experiences the Ananda of himself. Only difference is that avidya is still there, so he experiences knowledge through the veil of, he experiences happiness through the veil of ignorance, which is why he is not aware then that he is experiencing Ananda. He wakes up later and says, Sukhamaham asvapsam, I slept well, I was happy when I slept. It doesn't matter how much of how much debt you are in. It does not matter how horrible a disease you have. It does not matter how much you have fought with your wife before you slept. It does not matter how poor marks your son has got. You can have as many sorrows in the Jagrata Avastha as you can. But without fail, it is the experience of every single living being that Sushupti is pleasurable. Your body can be experiencing any amount of turmoil. Your mind can be experiencing any amount of turmoil. But Sushupti will be Ananda for everyone, because Sushupti is that Atma which is Ananda for everyone. Which is why, while it is a very interesting thing that if you are awake or in Swapnavastha, you will know if a mosquito bites you. If a mosquito bites you during Sushupti, you will not feel it. Right, because theoretically in Vedanta what they say is that during Sushupti everything gets laya. So actually the Jagrata Avastha does not even exist during Vedanta, during Sushupti. So once actually Patha was happening, and I asked Guru Garu about this, I asked Sandhya about this. What happens with these mosquitoes? I asked this. If the Sthola Sharira is still there when you sleep, why do we still get, and actually Guru Garu had told, reverse. Guru Garu had told this, that the Sthola Sharira does not exist during Sushupti. That is why you exist as only Ananda and you do not have any of the pains of the Jagrata Avastha. So then I asked, but then when a mosquito bites you while you are in Sushupti, how are you still feeling it being itchy when you wake up? I asked that. So if the Sthola Sharira is not there during Sushupti, then when I went to sleep, there was no mosquito bite. When I wake up, all of a sudden the mosquito has bitten me and you are now scratching it. So then it means that the mosquito must have bitten me in the middle. So how can Vedanta explain mosquito bites? I asked Guru Garu this once. And then Guru Garu very nicely told, while you are in Sushupti, you neither felt the mosquito, nor did you feel the bite, nor did you feel the itch. So it is the Sthula Sharira that is experiencing this. It is not you who is experiencing it. So in Sushupti, if I say that the Sthula Sharira is not there, because you are not experiencing it. It is exactly because the Sthula Sharira is not there that you feel it when you wake up and not during Sushupti. So Guru Garu very nicely made that small distinction, even though I had asked such a silly question about mosquito bites in the middle of Vedanta Patha. So in that way, that Sushupti, that is to say the Svatmananda, that all beings rest in after having become fatigued through the interactions of Jagrata Avastha, is Devi, who is the Atma Swarupa, just as all the birds who are fatigued by roaming around, they come to rest in their nest. In that way, Devi is that nest, and even in a higher sense, these jivas go through lokayatra vidhayini. We go through so many janmas and all. At some place, though, we will get tired of this. We will get viveka at some point. We will come back to our root at some point, and we will find rest in the Atma Padartha. That Atma Padartha is also Devi. So, in this sense, also Devi is Dvija Brinda Nishevita. So after talking about Sandhyavandana and all, very nicely, Bhaskara Raya has finished off with an incredibly Vedantic. So two meanings, one in wherein it is the Jiva. The Jiva Sushupti Avastha is this Dvijabrinda Nishevita. In a higher sense, where all the Jivas find Laya, that is also Dvijabrinda Nishevita. So in this sense, Bhaskaraya has very nicely, I think we covered only today the nature of sound, what sound is, what Shabda is has come, and then later also what Sandhya is, what Sandhyavandana is, what Sandhyopasana is, we have seen. Now the second part which I told you, all the dualities of Lalita Sahasranama, Murta, Akshara, Aksharatmika, Vidya, all of these we will save for day after tomorrow, the last session. So actually that session I had kept as miscellaneous topics. I think this is miscellaneous enough for us to cover on that day. So on that day we will see this. But for today, I think if we have to tie it together, we have seen what sound is. That sound comes as the Vedas. Gayatri is Vedamata, and that Veda tells us to do Sandhyavandana. Ahara Sandhyamupasita. So what that sound is and what this Sandhyavandana is, we have seen today. So in the coming sessions, we will see some more salient topics. Tomorrow will be the Upanishadic nature, how this is not just a stotra or tantra thing, but you will get straight Upanishadic knowledge in Lalitā Sahasranama. That will be the focus of tomorrow's talk. Bhumau skhalitapadanam bhumireva avalambanam tvayi jata paradhanam tvameva sharanam shive.